Hi, I'm Don Walkner, president of eData Law Group, and today we continue our series looking at the forensic or iron fist side of what we do, in which law firm of Don Walkner assists our clients to investigate, identify, and confront, either through civil litigation or criminal referral, the people that are causing harm or intending to cause harm, violating law, company policy, et cetera, et cetera. And that complements what our digital safety group does through Hayden Pritchard. That group helps people to insulate, manage, and report the manner in which devices are being used to protect people. We have a lot of clients that use us to protect teenagers, children, people with valuable or public reputations, et cetera, that want to protect themselves. DSG kind of works on the velvet glove side of the world. We work on the iron fist side of the world. What we're going to speak about today is why cell phones make such great little witnesses and how to interpret some of the information in them. And we're going to do a very, 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 very basic case, but just so that you can get an appreciation for why these devices are just so phenomenally interesting and fun. And in this case, some of you may instantly recognize that you are more qualified than others because I'm going to walk you through a pretend scenario, and that from that pretend scenario, we're going to determine whether or not whether you're an attorney or just whether you're an attorney or a client, do you know enough to even appreciate some of the evidentiary qualities of what's going on a cell phone. So we're going to do something very, very basic. I'm going to pretend Paul Ford, a completely made up person. I apologize if there's any Paul Ford out there in the world. We're not going to say anything nasty about that hypothetical person, but Paul Ford has been identified by an employee as the person that sent company information to a competitor. So we are shocked that our company information has been sent someplace, and we've got Sally, Jane, Bob, Jones, or whatever, all saying Paul did it. Paul's the guy. And the informant claims that Paul, the bad guy, sent several text messages from his iPhone to the informant's iPhone over several months. And the informant is pleased that the informant has conducted their own little mini investigation, and they have saved the text messages. They've saved Paul's iPhone text messages coming to the informant's text messages. Paul says, I didn't do any such thing. I'm being scapegoat, and Paul has asked us to help him. Well, of course, what's the first thing we ask for? We ask for the text messages. Let us see the text messages. That's what we want to see. And Paul says, okay, not only do we need the text messages, but Paul says that he took a screen capture and provided you a copy of that as well. So what do we got? We got some screen captures, we got some information, and we have got somebody asking for our help. It's real simple. Paul's the guy that supposedly did something wrong, and the informant has captured other messages from Paul to that other person. And let's see if we can't figure out what this might mean. We could, if we were using people approach, remember, versus digital approach, we could find people who saw Paul use his phone, interview them, and get them to testify and find out, does Paul even use an iPhone? Does Paul use an Android? Well, could we do that? We could get a forensic expert to examine Paul's phone, or try to figure out, well, who did he send this information allegedly to? Should we go after the competitors' phones? How can we help Paul out? And all of that would cost a lot of money. But initially, at the initial stages of the investigation, while that might be something people want to get down that rabbit hole pretty quickly, let's see if we can't take a look at this. Immediately, we ought to be able to say what? The informant is lying. It's as simple as that. Now, if you know why the informant is lying, good. If you don't, then I respectfully suggest that you know how to use your phones, but maybe you don't appreciate the type of information that you can glean from a phone in terms of evidence. Here's a pretend message. It's got a date and time on it. Well, you're right, it's got a time on it. And it's supposedly a message, and it says, hey, yes, do you respect me even though I'm an Android? Now, Paul might have pulled that up and said, look, this is me trying real hard to show somebody that I am just using an Android. And the informant might say, yeah, I got that. But that doesn't mean anything. Well, of course, that does mean he is using an Android. Why? Because these blocks are in green, not in blue. And we know that when an iPhone speaks to another iPhone, iPad, or other Apple product, the messages appear in blue bubbles. When they speak to an Android or non-Apple product, they speak in green bubbles. And we know that because green kind of signifies money. But the question we've got, even if you know that, the question is why? How does that happen? Especially in text messages. I use Verizon. So I send a text message through my Verizon account, and what? Why is it green? Why is it blue? If I've got an Apple phone and you got an Apple phone, is there something different? Does it affect my bill? Well, text displayed in a PNG screenshot, we talked about that in one of our private prior sessions, displays in green if it's going to from an Apple phone to a non-Apple device, because you're going to be charged for that. You're going to be charged for that. So we know that. Okay, that's fine. That must mean something in the world. You're going to be charged for that. Why? Because when Apple sends a text message from an Apple device to another Apple device, it goes through Apple servers. Apple doesn't charge you. If it goes through somebody else's servers, they may love Apple, but they're not going to do it to you for free. So when a text message goes through Apple servers, you don't get charged, and you know it because the text messages are in blue bubbles. When it goes through non-Apple servers, you are going to be charged. It goes through green bubbles so that you get the idea green is money, and that's some kind of announcement, if you will, that indeed whoever you're talking to, you're speaking to one another and you're paying for this. So if they've got an iPhone and you've got an Android, you're paying for this, and so are they. And it's kind of maybe a way of identifying when are you talking to another iPhone or iPad person. So here's how we know this. And this comes right out of, and if you did some research, you would find that Apple explains that iMessages are sent between iOS devices like Macs, etc., bypassing the phone company. Well, that's kind of neat. Those messages, or SMS messages sent to non-Apple, are sent over cellular towers through the phone company's cellular towers. Messages that are sent via cell towers are not encrypted either. In fact, there's some commercials going on right now where they got the person pretending to be a post office employee, and he's handing out letters. He's saying, here, it's the message is, I read your information, or other people can read it too, because SMS is not encrypted, and you may want to use an encrypted application like WhatsApp, etc. Well, iMessages encrypts it automatically for you. iMessages already uses end-to-end encryption. So not only do we get the green, meaning money, but the green also should be telling us not encrypted. Anybody can see this. If they were to catch it in between, anybody can see it. Versus the blue balloons. So in that very basic, very, very, very basic analysis, we can see that merely looking at this little screen tells us a couple of things. It tells us, an example, that we are dealing with at least a non-Apple set of servers. The servers through which this message passed are different than the servers through which messages pass when they're Apple servers. That could be important, as you're going to see in the next podcast. It also tells us that this message is not encrypted. And that may be important in your matter. And maybe somebody said something like, well, I couldn't read it because it was an encrypted message. And you're going, well, no, that can't be true. Something else is going on here. So if this little bitty demonstration at the most basic of levels is just trying to show you that embedded in this little nothing screen with these little 4 things here and some date time issues is this wealth of information about what the environment is like in the way in which it's being used, that information is also part of your understanding and having your eyes open to what's it like to be in a digital world. In part of that digital world, how might these phones be helpful, and what does it mean that one phone's talking to another inside that digital world? We're now going to take a look at the next podcast is going to show us how can we rely on the read receipt date on iPhones as another example of how cell phone information can be helpful but needs to be properly interpreted.